Sato ma satgamaya. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma amritam gamaya. Avir maeti. Rudra yakte dakshinamukam. Te namam pahinityam. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. From the unreal, lead us to the real. From darkness, lead us unto light. From death, lead us to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Om, peace, peace, peace. The topic today is clearing our heads. There's a way of greeting which is used in North India by some sadhus, and the question is, Darshan Safhai. In English, that means, is your vision clear? It means, are you grounded in the true reality? Is your mind centered in God? It is by using discrimination and renunciation that our vision becomes clear. The Vedantic text, called the Vivekachudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination, by Shankaracharya, is considered to be one of the most respected and scholarly scriptures, which specifically discusses Viveka, or Vedantic reasoning and discrimination. It not only leads the reader step by step, rationally and logically through the process of discrimination, but it is also one of the most beautifully written and poetic treatises on Vedanta philosophy. The student approaches the teacher and, with tears in his eyes, asks to be taught the way out of delusion. The teacher, with eyes full of compassion, says some of the most inspiring and beautiful words found in Vedantic literature. I'll give them to you in English. Fear not. There is no death for thee. There is a way to cross this sea of relative existence, that very way by which sages have gone beyond, and I shall teach it to you. There is a sovereign way by which sages have gone beyond, and that is the means which puts an end to the fear of relative existence. Following that path, you will cross the sea of samskara and attain supreme bliss. These words are like nectar to the yearning spiritual aspirant. I have to say, when I first went to Portland to see Swami Aseshananda, who was a disciple of Holy Mother, he took me into the library and said these words to me: "Fear not, there is a way to cross the sea of relative existence, and I will teach it to you." These words gave me great peace and hope. Shankara defines the fundamental tenet of Vedanta as Brahman Satya Jagat Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. Brahman is real, and the world is illusory. The individual soul is Brahman itself and nothing else. In Vedanta, the word Satyam, reality, is very clearly defined, and it has a specific significance. It doesn't mean what we usually mean here in the West when we use the word reality. We mean that which can be measured and experienced by the senses. In the Vedantic literature, it means that which exists in all the three periods of time, past, present, and future, without undergoing any change. And also in all the three states of consciousness, the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. Brahman is therefore the actually reality, birthless, deathless, and changeless, referred to in the Upanishads as Satyasya Satya, the truth of truths. Jagat Mithya, the world is illusory, or actually only apparently real. The world appears real only in the waking state, but it's negated, it disappears in the dream and deep sleep states. Hence, it is not the highest truth, according to Vedantic definition. Shankara in his later works, like the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, calls it Vyavyaharika Satya, or relative reality, or Pratibhasika Satya, apparent reality. The world is said to be mithya, only apparently real by Shankara. Jivo Brahmaiva na para, the individual soul is Brahman alone and nothing else. Jiva refers to the sentient principle in all living beings, including human beings. In the deep sleep state, the body, senses, mind, and intellect are all negated, but the jiva remains still. Hence, the jiva, since it continues on after sleep, is said to be one with the inner life principle, which revives the body, senses, and mind and intellect after deep sleep. This deeper life principle has its root in the pure consciousness that is the same in all beings. In fact, the whole of the world, or temporary reality, which we take to be true. The all-pervading Brahman of the Upanishads is that pure consciousness present in all jivas as their antaryami, or inner spirit, and it also appears as this world. In fact, there is nothing else. The Chandogya Upanishad says, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this verily is Brahman. Swami Turiyananda said when he first read the words Brahman Satya Jagat Mithya, he jumped for joy. This was what he was waiting to hear. It lifted up his heart. It is considered a Mahavakya, or a great saying in Vedantic literature. There's a story told about a king and a queen who lost their only son through an accident, and the wife, of course, was disconsolate. The king also was grieving, but when he fell asleep that night, he dreamed that he had 7 beautiful sons. In the dream, one by one, he lost them to illness or other accidents, and when he woke up, he found that he'd only lost 1 son. He became very calm. His wife, who was still weeping and seeing his calmness, accused him of being heartless and unfeeling. And he said to her, "Last night I dreamed I had 7 beautiful sons, and one by one they were taken from me. Should I mourn for them, or should I weep for our 1 son we have lost?" He became a jnani. He had realized the unreality of this Maya. Patanjali, the great Vedantic psychologist, tells us we can attain this knowledge by stilling the waves of our minds. We have to silence it, as it were. What does this mean? How can we see the dreamlike unreality of Maya and incorporate this truth into our lives? One way is to be aware of the passing objects. Simply stand back and look at the world around you. Gradually observe the countless objects that are ever changing in a process of coming and going. Just watch. Be the witness to all that is. Allow yourself also to remember the eternal nature that is always there. Then see how the external reality comes and goes on the canvas of that unchanging, eternal essence. Witness the eternal world in this way, the whole external world, and then allow your attention to turn inward to your own physical and energetic and mental makeup. Notice these more surface aspects of the mind and body are also temporary, and in a sense are also unreal, only relatively real. This practice increasingly allows the mind to see that there is an eternal aspect of our being behind the apparent reality. The mind comes to see that it must itself let go, so as to experience the eternal that is within. This is one form of discrimination. Not this, not this. Neti, neti. Open your eyes and see him, as Swamiji says. Look deeper, behind the apparent reality. Still, there is some reality here as long as we identify in the body and mind and we make choices. As Swami Seshananda once said, Vyavaharika Satya it may be, but ice cream is an ice cream. It attracts us and holds us through our desires. How can we find our way out of this Maya? How can we clear our minds of all the mistaken ideas we have about ourselves and the apparent world that we live in? Ramana Maharshi says, the quest, who am I, is the axe with which to cut off the ego. The first and foremost thought that arises in the mind is the I thought. Seek to find it. Know who you are, then all else will be known to you. He himself experienced this as a boy. Quote, it was about 6 weeks before I left Madura for good that a great change in my life took place. It was quite sudden. I was sitting in a room on the first floor of my uncle's house, and I seldom had any sickness. And on that day, there was nothing wrong with my health. But suddenly, a great fear of death came over me. There was nothing in my state of health to account for it. And I didn't try to account for it or to find out whether there was any reason for the fear. I just felt I'm going to die. And I began thinking of what to do about it. It didn't occur to me to consult a doctor or my elders or friends. I felt that I had to solve this problem myself, then and there. The shock of the fear of death drove my mind inward, and I said to myself mentally, without framing the words, now death has come. What does it mean? What is it that is dying? This body dies. And at once I dramatized the occurrence of death. I lay with my limbs stretched out stiff as though rigor mortis had set in and imitated a corpse so as to give myself a greater reality of the inquiry. I held my breath. I kept my lips tightly closed so that no sound could escape, so that neither the word I or any other word could be uttered. Well then, I said to myself, this body is dead. It will be carried stiff to the burning ground and there burnt and reduced to ashes. But with the death of this body, am I dead? Is the body I? It is silent and inert. But I feel the full force of my personality and even the voice of I within me apart from it. So I am spirit, transcending this body. The body dies, but the spirit that transcends it cannot be touched by death. This means I am the deathless spirit. All this was not a dull thought. It flashed through me vividly as a living truth, which I perceived directly, almost without a thought process. I was something very real, the only real thing about my state. And the conscious activity connected with my body was centered on that I. From that moment onward, the I, or self-focused attention on itself, by a powerful fascination. Fear of death had vanished once and for all. Absorption into the self continued unbroken from that time onward. Other thoughts might come and go, like the various notes of music, but the I continued like the fundamental Shruti note that underlies and blends with all the other notes. When the body was engaged in talking, reading, or anything else, I was still centered on my I. Previous to that crisis, I had no clear perception of myself and was not consciously attracted to it. I felt no perceptible or direct interest in it, much less any inclination to dwell permanently in it. This experience permanently changed his life. According to Vedantic philosophy, the true self of man is the nature of divinity. He's perfect, eternal, and infinite. Yet we find ourselves, through the influence of Maya, illusion, or ignorance, identified with so many things. Maya is said to have two powers: the veiling power of ignorance, avarana shakti, and the projecting power of illusion, vikshepa shakti. Maya works on both the cosmic level and within the individual. When the universe evolves, it begins in a very causal, subtle state. Here it is luminous, very fine, almost a perfect manifestation of divinity. It is the first cause or evolute, and from here it becomes more and more degenerated till it becomes this gross manifestation. This happens through the power of Maya. Swami Vivekananda has a beautiful series of 3 lectures in Jnana Yoga called Maya, Maya and the Evolution of the Concept of God, and Maya and Freedom. I recommend that you read and study these lectures. Swamiji once said he considered these to be his best lectures. Here he gives us a list of many things from the gross to the most subtle, and each time he says, and all this is Maya. All this is Maya runs like a refrain throughout these lectures. Maya also affects our subjective universe. We first have a causal, very subtle, almost perfect state of mind, or buddhi, very pure. Sri Ramakrishna actually says, pure buddhi is Brahman. This pure intelligence, deep hidden in the lotus of the heart, as the Upanishads tell us, this is the first causal manifestation of mind, and it's followed by other states of mind, the vital force and the senses. These things are not altogether subjective in a person. They're also instrumental, and therefore partially objective, but are so mixed up with our identification with ourselves that we call them subjective. But if we meditate on them deeply, we will find that they too are a degeneration of our true state. We are identified more or less with our bodies and minds, and we live through this reality. In fact, in Western thought, that which can be measured, experienced by the senses, the most gross of this manifestation is what we mean when we say real or reality. It's our shared perception of the external reality brought to us by our senses, but we always filtered through our minds, which already dispose us to see things in a certain way. I read an article once which said that a baby listening to voices around it, by the age of 6 months, is already filtering out the sounds that will make up its native language. We are prejudiced from our very birth as we are taught things like, I'm a woman or I'm a man, I'm an American or an Indian. I'm tall or short, blonde, dark. We become more and more prejudiced without even being aware about it. Swami Vivekananda gives us an example of using our discrimination in his inspired talks given in Thousand Island Park. Quote, all we see is the Atman, but is not rightly seen through name and form. They are in the veil, in Maya. They are like spots in the object glass of a telescope, yet it is the light of the sun which shows us the spots. We could not even see the illusion save for the background of the reality, which is Brahman. Vivekananda, the man, is just a speck on the object glass, but truly I'm the Atman, real and unchangeable. And that reality alone enables me to see Vivekananda. The Atman is the essence behind every hallucination. The sun is never identified with the spots on the glass. Neither is the Atman with name and form. Our actions, evil or good, increase or decrease as the veil, the spots, but never is the self affected. Cleanse the mind of the spots and you will instantly see, I and my Father are one, as Jesus says. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. We need to clear our minds. Very early on in the Vivekachudamani, a list is given of the qualifications necessary for a spiritual aspirant. The first thing mentioned is viveka, or discrimination, which is defined as a firm conviction of the mind to the effect that Brahman is real and the universe is unreal. Seeing clearly, being able to understand the truth about what we experience, and making choices using our understanding are all part of this discrimination. When Swami Triyananda was just a boy with Sri Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna saw how he's spending hours studying the Vedantic texts. He said to Triyananda, what are these Vedantic texts saying? It is that Brahman alone is real and all else is unreal, isn't it? The truth is very simple. When our minds become cluttered, we sometimes just want to clear our heads, like washing our face with cool water. Regular times of meditation can help us to clear our thoughts. If we can dive deep into our innermost being, we can find true peace and stillness of the mind. Bathing in his name, that bath for weary souls. Meditation can help us to keep our minds clear and tranquil. It can refresh us and clear our heads, as it were, so that we see more clearly. We're surrounded with so much chatter, our cell phones, our computers, our videos, our music, not to speak of the constant chatter within our own minds. Language is a thing that allows us to communicate with others. We live in a world of words. Our thoughts and ideas are constantly streaming to us and through us in the medium of words. Language has elevated human beings to a realm of communication and intellectual achievement not possible for other beings. But there is a realm which is beyond mind and speech, beyond all thought. There is a stillness of the infinite that is pure Brahman, vibrating consciousness and bliss absolute. It is here and it is there. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Pure mind is Brahman, Sri Ramakrishna tells us. The clarity of our hearts and mind is being obstructed by all our words and thoughts. The first thing in the manifested universe is sound. They say there is a sound, the anahata sound, which is like Om, arising from the infinite. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God, the Bible tells us. The Devi Sukta says, and whosoever breathes or hears the spoken word unknowingly, they all abide in me. In truth, I speak. Hear, O holy tradition. I alone uttered the word of truth. So how can we quiet our minds? One of the main practices which is beneficial for purifying the mind is the practice of japa, or meditation on a mantra, a name of God. Here we are trying to concentrate our minds so there is just one thought. We do this through meditation on the sound form of our chosen ideal. The whole universe is vibrating. Our bodies also are vibrating in tune with our heart's beating and with our breath, our prana. We don't even think about it. The heart is always beating as long as we live and breathe in rhythm with the universe. I once talked to somebody who'd had a heart valve replacement, and he said it was very strange at first because he could actually hear his heart beating. We can make our mantra also repeat in tune with our heart so that it's constantly sounding with it. It can be the last thing we think of before we sleep and the first thing we hear when we awaken. It is going on constantly. It becomes like a current in us that is carrying us to the divine. This mantra purifies our bodies and minds, and we become peaceful and tranquil. The body, senses, and mind all become purified by this repetition of the mantra. Our endless thoughts and emotion become purified, and we become sattvic and peaceful. Our very environment also seems purified. The sky above and earth below are moving in rhythm with the divine. We see everything as pulsating with the divine. We become aware of the divine light behind everything that permeates the whole universe. One of the forms of meditation that they suggest to people is the light behind the eyes, the consciousness vibrating behind my eyes and behind your eyes. And every being in the universe is also vibrating in the mantra. The Shabda Brahman, sound Brahman, is vibrating through the entire universe. Everything is manifesting through this power of Brahman, and we can become the witness of all that is. Sri Ramakrishna said that the mantra is like a chain tied to a log that is submerged in a pool of water. If we grab hold of the chain and pull on it link by link, we draw what is submerged to the surface. By chanting God's name, we actually realize God because the name and the Ishta are one. Swami Shraddhananda tells us, finally, the devotee becomes convinced that the holy name of God is really God himself, the source of everything. One increasingly feels that the universe has become the mantra as God, as the divine form of the Word. The ultimate vibration takes over and absorbs everything. The devotee feels that the whole universe, all thought and experience, is the vibration of the mantra only. When this stage is reached, the devotee feels that everything within and without is the mantra. Then the repetition of the mantra actually ceases. The mantra merges into Om and ultimately into silence. The vibrations of the mantra merge into consciousness behind the sound itself. Through practice and meditation, the mantra merges into the sound Om, and Om itself into Ashabda Brahman, the soundless Brahman. Om Sarve Vedayat Param Amananti tapamsi sarvani cha yad vedanti yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti tate padam samgrahena bravimo mityetata etate vyaksharam brahma etate vyaksharam param etate vaksharam yatva yo yadichati tasya tata etadalambanam shreshtam etadalambanam param etadalambanam yatva brahmaloke mahiyate. This is from the Katha Upanishad. The goal which all Vedas proclaim, which all who perform austerities declare, desiring which they lead a pure life, I tell you in brief, it is Om. This syllable is Brahman. This syllable is also the highest. Having known this syllable, one attains everything. This support is the best. This support is the supreme. Swami Brahmananda tells us, behind the mind of ours, there is a subtle spiritual mind existing in seed form. Through the practice of contemplation, prayer, and japa, this mind is developed, and with this development of a new vision opens up, and the aspirant realizes many spiritual truths. Unless the heart and mind are pure, the vision of God does not come. The nature of the mind can be changed by chanting the name of the Lord, that is, repeating it. It aids in focusing the mind on one thought only. Gradually, all desires and doubts cease, and the mind dissolves into its causality. Then there's none to think or imagine. Waves of desire in the mind show the mind is active. The mind becomes pure only when it becomes waveless. The power of God descends on the pure mind, or comes from within the pure mind. And only then does one realize the self. Always remember that to the pure mind, all things are pure. You may see many aspects of God in many spiritual forms, or you may see an ocean of light or a steady flame. There's no end to this God unfoldment, this knowledge of infinite existence, infinite bliss. Light, more light. Is there any end to it? Swami Shivananda says, the more you try to enter within, reaching the inner and innermost recesses of your heart, the greater the light you will receive. Light cannot be found anywhere outside. It is all within. The mother, the embodiment of light, is in every heart. She is with me. She is within you. She is everywhere, in everything, from Brahman down to the smallest insect, in the movable and in the immovable. Pray to Mahamaya, the firstborn. She holds the key in her hands. The realm of light will be opened unto you if she graciously unlocks the door. She alone is the source of the entire universe. We've all come from that mother and will eventually merge in her again. The primordial energy, the power of Brahman, is beyond the reach of our intellect. She manifests herself in pure mind. Man cannot reach or understand her through spiritual practice alone. She is self-luminous. It is her consciousness that makes this world conscious. Hold on to that mother. She is within you. It is she who will open the way to the light. Dive deep within and you will discover the light. That is the essence of all teachings. Be resigned to the mother and pray to her earnestly, crying like a child, and you will discover the light. The Bhagavad Gita tells us, the illumined soul whose heart is Brahman in Brahman thinks always, I'm doing nothing. No matter what he sees, touches, smells, eats, no matter whether he's moving, sleeping, breathing, speaking, grasping something with his hand, opening his eyes or closing his eyes. Thus he knows always, I'm not seeing, I'm not hearing. It is the senses that see and hear and touch the things of the senses. He puts aside his desires, offering all acts to Brahman. The lotus leaf rests unwetted on the water. He rests on action, untouched by this action. The Atman is the light of consciousness. The light is covered by darkness, and this darkness is delusion. That is why we dream. When the light of the Atman drives out our darkness, that light shines forth in us, a sun in splendor, the revealed Brahman. The devoted dwell with him. They know him always, there in the heart, where action is not. He is their aim. Made free by his knowledge, they find the place of freedom, the place of no return. When our hearts become pure and transparent, when all the impressions of the past have been wiped out, then only will he enshrine himself in our heart. Then only will he become manifest there. One Christian saint said, if you want God to come in your heart, first throw out all the furniture. This means get rid of everything that is not God. The pure mind receives a clear reflection of God. Be pure and tranquil. Realize him in this very life. The company of holy men and women make the heart pure. Reciting the mantra also purifies the mind. Beyond this universe lies that ocean of divine light, and it is through the grace of great souls that we find our way to the light. They help us rise from a lower to a higher plane, and thus we get the inspiration to cross the sea of the material world and move into the ocean of divine light. Adbhutananda tells us, be pure, be pure, be pure. You cannot comprehend God without purity. If you are not pure, you won't realize God, who is the embodiment of purity. In order to serve God, the true master of all, one must purify one's mind. He tells us, sometimes the Lord Shiva showers his mercy upon me. But bear in mind, if you want his grace, you will have to lie at his door like a faithful dog. The vision of God does not depend on your will. You have to resign yourself completely. Instead of thinking about oneself, one should think of others. This leads to a gradual illumination of the unsteadiness of the mind. Purification of the mind means nothing but the annihilation of our egocentric ideas and removal of selfishness from the mind. The more the mind expands, the more are the egotistic ideas annihilated. When the mind is free from all impurities, the knowledge of Brahman gets revealed in that pure mind. By serving the lowly and downtrodden as Shiva, the Lord himself, one has one's own heart purified. In the pure heart, the Lord manifests himself of his own accord. Swami Ramakrishna Nanda also says, be wholly surrendered. The moment you can give up everything and know your own nothingness, at that moment, God vision will come and you will be free. You must go beyond your mind and senses. Then meditation will come of itself. This is the only way to get inner vision, the only way to make your mind single and one-pointed. In fact, Glory pervades everything, but we can't see him because of our own nescience. Remove the veil and you find him everywhere, self-manifested. Sri Ramakrishna used to give the following illustration to explain the highest state of spiritual realization. Imagine several vessels filled with water, and the sun is reflected in each one. Break each vessel till only one remains, with the sun fully reflected in it. Finally, you break even the last vessel, and what remains? The sun itself? No, he tells us. What is, is. Similarly, the self-luminous Brahman is reflected in the vessels of our mind, senses, ego, etc. Break these vessels one after another and go beyond the physical consciousness, the subtle body, the causal body, until you reach Savakalpa Samadhi. Then you will see God. But here, even in this stage, the sense of separateness will still remain. The last vessel is still to be broken. Break it and what remains? Brahman and Brahman alone. Who is there left to see whom? Who to describe whom? There's a Sanskrit shloka which says, Yatra yatra manoyati, tatra tatra samadaya. Wherever the knower of Brahman puts his mind, there he sees only God. We have only to give back to God what's already his. He's the doer. Man in delusion thinks I am the doer. This is doing God's will and knowing that we are not the doer. This is freedom. This is mukti, the end of sorrow. Esha sarveshu bhuteshu gudho atmana prakashate drishyate tvagraya buddhya sukshmaya sukshmadarshibihi. The Atman, hidden in all beings, reveals itself not to all, but is seen only by the seers of the subtle through their pointed and subtle intellect. And the Upanishads teach that the subtle intellect or buddhi dwells not in the heart, in the head, but in the heart. The subtle vision of God makes all imperfection vanish as darkness goes when the sun shines. Again, there's no difference between the purified mind and the true self of man. The mind is pure when it's single, when it is devoted to one object. If you wish to see God, the only way is to get rid of all selfish desires and make the mind single. Swami Shivananda said in his presidential speech in the Ramakrishna Mission in 1926, quote, "Be like the arrow that darts from the bow. Be like the hammer that falls on the anvil. Be like the sword that pierces its object. The arrow does not murmur if it misses the target. The hammer does not fret if it falls on the wrong place. And the sword does not lament if it is broken in the hands of its wielder. Therefore, it is a joy in being made, used, and broken, and an equal joy in being finally set aside." weekend, we will be celebrating Swami Brahmananda's puja on the 6th Sunday. And I see here Ish Atmananda, the head of the Vivekananda Society in Chicago, is speaking, doing the gospel class on the 2nd. And I'm assuming that's Zoom, so that will also be available.
He'll also speak on the Puja Day.
Oh, is he going to be here?
Yes.
Oh, he will be here. Oh, good. All right, so we'll have him in person. So I will end with another chant. Om Dyo Shantir Antariksham Shanti Prithvi Shantir Apa Shanti Oshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Vishwe Deva Shantir Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Same Shantireti Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace is in the heaven, peace is in the sky and on the earth and in the waters. The herbs, the plants, and the trees are all full of peace. The gods are peaceful. Everything in the universe is pervaded by peace. May this eternal universal peace enter our soul and being. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.